that support. All you need is support. It's so easy, don't depend on them, don't wait for them, don't let them tell you what you got to do. You got your own mind, do what you want. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're watching this video from in the world. If you're new, my name is P and welcome to Team P&P Multifamily YouTube channel. And today we're going to do a video on how much does eBay Vinted Depop charge for fees. How much fees and charges do Vinted, eBay and Depop take from each sale? It is a very much searched subject on Google Trends, so this is why, and I've been asked quite a lot of questions regarding eBay, Depop, Vinted, and fees comes up quite high. So today we're going to do a video and give you a quick snapshot, quick rundown on how much fee does each platform charge or take from each sale. So starting with eBay, because that's the #1 platform, #1 market share, most customers, most sales, most category, and you can basically practically sell anything on eBay. Now eBay's bottom line or first charge, basic charge, would be 10% depending on category and other specifics, but or up to 15.5%, and it just depends on what kind of categories you're in and depending what item and what country you're in. All the different fees may vary, but as in we're in UK, the UK average, on average per item, is around 10 to 15% per item, including all other charges that eBay do. For example, if you're promoting your item, it could be an extra 5%, 10%, or people like to do the basic 2% entry for promoted listing. Also, eBay do charge an insertion fee, which is 30 pence final of the transaction sale price. So you can see that it does add up, but even though that 30p or an extra 1.5% would then make it be 16-17% from basically every sale you make from eBay. eBay will take roughly about 17%, 15.5%, or 10% from the transaction value of the item that was sold. And then also, that's just if you're a private seller. So you can be a private seller, or you can be a eBay seller who has a shop subscription, which you would pay. The basic shop is $19.99 and you will get an additional 1,000 free listings. Otherwise, you can just stay as a private seller, which is why the individual final value fee does fluctuate also with the variables of the categories. So that all over makes eBay still quite competitive when you look at the features, the benefit, and also the application and the users and use cases it has. eBay does have the market share, so the rate of sales, volume and conversion, impressions, click-through rate should be really high with eBay, which means then it would be still a very valuable proposition to be a seller, or if you're a reseller, to be at least on eBay. Now moving on swiftly, because I'm a multi-platform reseller, I also sell on Depop. Now Depop is for more of a younger age group, so therefore the items of quality and standards are still very high, but I would primarily say it have to be high-end pre-owned items, and preferably some sellers on Depop do sell primarily vintage or wholesale or new by doing retail arbitrage from TK Maxx and such places like that, JD Sports, Boots, clearances, Esco clearances to get the new items. But also they primarily sell on clothing, and their average fees and charges would be roughly 10%, or it could be as high as 15% plus the transaction fee because the final transaction fee, for example, on Vinted, when you finish your transaction, you will still have to pay an extra 2.9% for PayPal or for banking transaction fees. So overall, Vinted is probably the only one that does not give you no fees, so we'll come back to that. But Depop does keep it quite competitive with eBay, but there is a trade-off. So now, for example, it comes up to be 12% that Depop charge on average. Their bottom line is around 12%, plus there's a final insertion fee, or that fee they charge to the customer, and also all the transaction fees for depending if you bank or PayPal, which then brings it to around 17%, 17.5%. And I would say their entry is around 13.5 to 15%, 15.5% when it comes to adding up all the different charges that Depop will end up charging you. So that would then be slightly higher than eBay charges for all their services. So Depop is still a good platform to be on, but I would say Depop is the most expensive one, and from my experience I get the least sales from Depop as well, but they are high value sales when I do get them, as I've said, due to the nature of the higher quality and higher standards of item that the customers on Depop are looking for, which makes Depop quite competitive. But I wouldn't say Depop would be high in my list of, or be my primary. So moving on swiftly to the final, and probably if it's just for fees and charges, Vinted is probably the best for that, because it's zero fee to the seller, but there is fees and charges to be made from the buyer. Now that the buyer is the one that the Vinted are the ones that are exploiting their customers from, not just the sellers, but they do have different fees depending on the category or the item you sell. But generally speaking, their entry level of fees is zero, but they do have fees from entry, if there is any fees, from 3% to 8%, which is all towards the buyer. The buyer, for their buyer protection, is the one that pays the percentage of that, and the seller receives the full asking price, or the price that they've ended up agreeing to sell the item for. So Vinted, though, it's an all-rounder. They do have quite a few good categories, but it is seen as the better version than Facebook sales, and it's also seen as like where you can get cheap items, because it is still a new platform, but it's moving and performing the best out of all the platforms, and it's innovating a lot of sales because it's got very simple app, no fees, buyer protection. So the buyers, even though they're paying for the buyer protection, it is still around 3 to 8% on top of what their item is and the postage. But after that, there is no fees and never fees for the seller. So therefore, that's comparing it to eBay or Depop. There's fees for sellers and there's fees for buyers, whereas Vinted only has fees for buyers and no fees for sellers. So that does make it competitive, but it's also the smallest market, but it's growing, and it's growing exponentially. So Vinted are also making big waves in the reselling game, or generally in the arbitrage market. So after giving you a quick recap and a breakdown of all of the free platforms that I'm currently doing my most transactions from and getting my most impressions, click through, my most views, and I have a high conversion rate because they do have volume and use case and users, and their application, their benefits and their services all round is really high, which that will still go to the number one, which is eBay. Secondly, I will give it to Vinted, then Depop, and then Etsy, and of course the Wild Wild West is still Facebook Marketplace, and there's others coming as well. So if you enjoyed this video, we've got plenty more in our playlist. Thank you for all the support, thank you for all your comment. Please leave one, tell me what else you find interested in this video. What was your favorite aspect of this video, and also what next would you like to know regarding reselling and what it takes to be either part-time, side hustle, or full-time as an e-commerce reseller in the UK with all the platforms that are available. So thank you for all your support. Check out the links, hit the like, subscribe, share the video, and I'll catch you on the next one. Team PMP, Pete Ghost. I'm gonna let you know and keep giving it to you. Learn as we go, learn as we grow. Doing it is what we do. Archer, let's go.
Is that support? All you need is support. It's so easy, don't depend on them, don't wait for them, don't